Mr. Nic Collins. How are you, brother?
Good, man. How are you?
Good, man. Hey, the audio and the video looks and sounds fantastic. How's it for your end? All good?
Great, amazing. No, I was gonna check because last time I did one of these, I think there was like a reverb and a delay on my mic, and nobody told me. So the entire interview, it just sounds like I'm totally spaced out. So
I will tell you, man, that I mean, I don't do a lot of these. This is the smoothest in that I've had so far. Usually it's like, or they can't see or they can't hear. And I'm like, man, after, we've been doing this for so long in terms of video calls, but for some reason the entry into them is always really difficult.
oh, well, I'm glad it's all smooth. I'm glad it's working out. And dude, thank you again for having me on and for just even wanting to take the time, man. It's an honor.
Not at all, man. Yeah, I think, you're a fascinating case for a lot of reasons. And I will say right at the top of this, well, first, no, thanks for making some time for this too, man. I really appreciate it. I know that you probably have a lot on your plate, as we all do. And so just making some time to have a chat is really cool. And then secondly, I just wanted to say right at the top too that you're a fantastic drummer, man. And like without a doubt, you being on this is like, regardless of being Phil's son, you're worthy of being recognized as just such a fantastic drummer. But I can't ignore the fact that you're Phil's son.
No, I appreciate it. Thank you very much, dude. Really do.
My pleasure.
I, love your playing, and it was when you reached out about doing this, I was, super stoked about it because your videos, your playing, your tones. I mean, we've exchanged comments back and forth, but seriously, I'm a really big fan.
Oh man, I appreciate that. I looked back, we've kind of touched a back and forth for a little bit now. And I actually, from our first chat, I'd be like, oh man, it'd be really cool to talk to Nic. So it's nice that we're able to make some time for it.
Right on, man. Nice. And are you at a home studio, or do you have like a different space that you go to?
So this is about 16 kilometers from my house, and I've had the studio space for about 3 years now, maybe 4 years, and it's in the heart of a building where the first half of it is a music school, and the back half of it is a 400 capacity venue for the area.
Oh wow!
And so a lot of bands that are sort of up and coming, if not even a little bit bigger here in New Zealand, will pass through this venue. You have a space too, right?
Yeah, so right now I'm in my apartment, I have a little home studio room, but there's no drums in.
Okay.
And I've actually been trying to get an electric kit here because I basically my kit is where the bass player in Better Strangers, his name is Yannick, and he has a studio. We kind of built it together. It's his space, but we kind of learned how to, engineer and record out of there just by figuring it out, being hands-on.
Wicked.
And so, yeah, so he lets me kind of leave all my stuff there. So my real drums are over there. And if I'm ever doing any recording, or obviously if the band's rehearsing, that's where we're doing stuff. And most of my gear's over there. But here at home, since I play a bit of guitar and piano and bass, I can kind of do some writing here. But I wanted to get an electric kit because when you're kind of when I'm doing stuff like this, I kind of want to just be able to quickly hop on the kit and lay something down as even if it's a demo. And, although it's only a 30-minute drive away, you got to start planning for that. And then by the time you go there, the spontaneity is completely gone.
It's funny, yeah, even though it's only 30 minutes, it's still a commitment.
Yeah. And then you're like, if you go, you're like, I've got to be here for at least 2 or 3 hours for it to feel like it was worthwhile.
Yeah.
Whereas back when I lived, at home, I had a drum room right next to my bedroom. So even if I was in there for 10 minutes or, 5 hours, it didn't matter. I could just go in there. So I'm kind of thinking of getting an electric kit here just so I can at least have something. Because I've got like one of those like DW pad, like practice pad setups.
Those things are awful.
Yeah, like I got it. So like, because I had a practice pad to do all the rudiments and stuff. And then I was like, maybe if I get, a tom and a floor tom placement, I can kind of work on articulation. But I'm like, I'm not playing drums. I'm not playing music. This is just notes.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
Dude, the one that I do recommend in terms of practice pad kits, even though it's like obscenely expensive, is the Tama True Touch one. That's what I have.
Okay.
I use the DW one many a times when either my life didn't permit me to play my drums or just whatever. I did a Meshuggah medley years ago, and I learned the whole thing on the DW practice kit before I took it to the studio and recorded it. They're all good, but the surfaces are just really harsh.
Yeah.
But the Tama True Touch one, which I got a little while back just because someone recommended it, they really engineered it for people that want to practice in comfort. But it's obscenely expensive. It's like maybe 4 times the price of the DW one.
Yeah, I've got the Tama like pedal, like kick drum, kind of thing.
Oh, the kick pad one. Yeah.
And that one's great. It feels good. I can't get it to stay still.
Nah, neither, eh? I have to keep it up against the wall.
Yeah.
Which seems like a real fail on the role of what it has to do, because it's been engineered. The two things they over-engineered was the snare and the kick pad, but man, just finding that balance point is a real pain in the ass.
Yeah, and then you start putting the rods down, and I'm like, am I going to screw up my floor? Like, it's going to go through the carpet or something. So,
or I'm like, maybe I need to get the rods sharpened by my dad, because my dad's an engineer, and just to like grind them so that they really dig into the ground.
Exactly.
Okay, so there's a couple of launching points here that I thought I'd kick off from, even just from talking to you now. Is your studio space that you rehearse in, is that where you were filmed doing your modern drummer gear breakdown?
Yeah, like the studio kit rundown. Yeah.
Yeah. Oh man, that's a cool space. It's like, it looks like it's a place just to get everything done. And I'm assuming, like, just based on what you said then, that you guys do record yourselves and you do engineer yourselves. Oh no, you used David Bottrill, didn't you?
Well, so we've never technically recorded with David yet. Our relationship with David's been like a case of like almost every single time.
Did you choose David based on your tool?
Absolutely.
Fanship? Good call, man. He's fantastic.
Oh, he's great. And I mean, the way it goes, so that studio got built in 2019, the one that we work out of. And ever since then, we've been engineering all of the stuff ourselves.
Awesome.
Then we had a guy called James Meslin, Jimmy T. He does monitors for Dream Theater. He was mixing some stuff back in the day. And then we decided, which was a stupid decision, let's mix an EP ourselves, which
trial by fire.
Yeah, it's the worst, because I feel like there's an element of compromise when you're working with somebody, because you're assuming, oh, if they got this sound, they just landed on it, or this is what they could do with the sound you gave them. Whereas when it's just in your hands, you're going, the snare's not dialed in, and I have to keep going until the snares. And if you don't really know what you're doing, it's really difficult. So we had done this EP with our previous singer. And then we started talking with David, and we had gone to this studio here in Miami called Criteria. We have a friend of mine who's Eric Distrud. He's like a drum tech. He was like, I want to take you guys to Criteria, take you to a mixing room, and have you listen to this EP. Because he was like, it sounds like garbage. And I need you to go to a real mixing room and to be able to tell.
Good. You need those honest people in your life.
Yeah, exactly. So we went, and he had like prepared everything. He then goes, okay, look, here's the contact form for David Bottrill. And I'm going, oh, wouldn't it be nice to have, I'm thinking, like, that's so far-fetched, the guy Lateralis, Anima, like, and those are like two of the most important, I mean, they're two of my favorite albums, but for our band, they're two of the most important albums for us, inspiration-wise. I reached out, and within a couple minutes, he got back, and it was like, oh my God, I'm talking to David Bottrill right now. And even in my first message to him, I was just like, I need to fanboy. The albums you worked on changed my life sonically, everything. And so then, unfortunately, with that singer, things just fell through.
So which singer? So what year was that? Because I've listened to the 22 release. Was that with that singer?
Yeah, so that was with that singer. So this would have been in spring of 2023.
Yeah, and
then things kind of, we've got nothing but positive things to say about Ricky, our last singer. It was just, he was in Texas, and I think we just were moving in kind of different directions. We were getting a bit more proggy, and he was, maybe not super into it. So it didn't work out then, but then we were kind of on and off with another singer to try and make things work. And we did get in the studio more so like kind of pre-production stuff with David, where he kind of helped us, write some of the songs and structure them a little bit.
What was that experience like?
Dude, I previously haven't had a great experience with producers, because I don't like it when somebody comes in with the mentality of like, I've done this, so like, you don't know what you're talking about, and I do, listen to me. When they kind of take over, whereas David was very much, it almost felt like he was the band therapist. He was opening the floor to like ideas, and then he would suggest things without necessarily being like, go to this chord. He was more like trying to push us. Hey, why don't you, I think there's something to explore there. what if you kind of lean in this direction? And it was great. After we finished it, I had a great time, and I was like, I totally understand why bands would be hiring him and would want to work with him.
It is interesting that way, because not to cut you off, but the role of a producer is so varied.
Yeah.
You know, like hands-on, not hands-on. Sometimes the producer just goes and gets their washing done while the band's, but sometimes they're like fully in their writing. And what I've noticed over like, 25, 30 years of doing music is that it's a roll of the dice as to whether they're going to work with you, or you're going to pull the plug, or it's going to be this amazing relationship, or it's going to be like a regret afterwards because of the process. And, you look at Rick Rubin with the Mars Volta for the first album, which, what an amazing kinship. But then from Omar's perspective, it wasn't a great experience, and he considers the second album the first Mars Volta album. You know what I mean?
Wow. Yeah, that's so crazy.
And from the fan's perspective to the artist's perspective on such an integral role, I just find that quite fascinating. So finding a producer that you really work with obviously works, but sometimes finding one that you don't work with can pull an amazing diamond out of the rough as well. Anyway,
absolutely.
Keep going.
But that was the thing, is with David, we were more into what the record sounded like. We were just like, we loved the way this was mixed, and and that was more our attraction to him. We didn't know what he was like as far as like a producer, as writing or not writing, but you know what I mean, like that Rick Rubin style. Yeah. And he was great, and so we kept in touch. Obviously, when we ended up putting a couple songs out, we did like a live EP last year.
Dude, very, very good stuff. Because I was listening to it with basically putting you through a fine-tooth comb. Really, really just trying to like hyper focus on the pressures of doing that, And I will say, I do think that you're carrying a lot more pressures than what most people would even realize. Maybe even you don't realize half the time. Even in this conversation, I'm almost thinking that because you've always come across as such a lovely person, I'm like, man, you don't seem to wear your history or your heritage on your shoulders, which I think is just fascinating in itself. But your performance on that EP is stunning, man. Like you're such a great player.
Oh, dude, thank you so much, man. That was the first show we did instrumentally, because after we'd been kind of doing stuff with a singer and it wasn't working out, we were like, we need to exist. It's been 2 years. I'd been doing some stuff, but the two other guys in the band hadn't been on stage. We were just like, let's just get out there and just try it. And so we recorded that at the show, had a friend kind of video it and set up a couple cameras, and we were like, and that we did mix ourselves.
That came out great.
Yeah, it sounds pretty good, considering, it's through a board of a venue, and you're dealing with, like, there was a fan hitting the overheads dead on. You're like, this is great. Like, you know what I mean?
It's
like,
white noise. Yeah.
Yeah, exactly. So, but, we were really pleased with that. And that, we decided, let's just put something out. That way there's something on our Spotify that's newer than 4 years old, or however long it's been since we put out the last thing. So I appreciate it, man. It's I think there's a bit of an acceptance when you're doing live stuff of like the perfection, and you're more just chasing the vibe,
exactly,
and the feel, and like.
No, well, you guys definitely did that.
Yeah, thanks, man. And the 4 songs we put out on the EP were the stronger ones. Then we have like a full video which has like 2 or 3 extra songs that's on YouTube.
Okay.
But we were just like, those 4 just feel like they hold up the best instrumentally, because that's been a whole thing for us, is like, we've never seen ourselves as an instrumental band.
So are you staying instrumental?
So at the moment we've been in the studio recording an EP instrumentally, but because I'm like, let's try and get something that's really, I guess not, produced, because one thing is a live thing, but let's get something that's in studio that really we can get it sounding great to showcase the instrumental side. I think deep down we'd rather have a singer, but we're just kind of right now, let's just keep going as we are. But we definitely open that door. That's the thing, is ideally we write songs where there's an obvious space for a top line or a melody. We find it very hard, because I feel like nowadays with instrumental progressive bands, it's almost like you got to retain the attention every 10 seconds. And I think for us, for example, like comparing ourselves to a band like Animals as Leaders or like Pliny, like those guys, it's like, we're so like, they're complete freaks of nature in the stuff that they're doing. So it's like finding our place, and like, does this hold up instrumentally? And that's been the big thing of us trying to convince ourselves. Yes, it does.
A journey through your voice and trying to find your space in there. I mean, instrumental bands are a niche within themselves, and not every instrumental band works for everyone. Like even with Animals as Leaders and Plenty and stuff, which we've all listened to a bunch. Like, that's not my style of instrumental music. even though I'm super inspired by the musicians independently,
Mhm.
when it's put together, it's not necessarily what I gravitate towards. But then I listen to your guys' stuff, and for me personally, I'd sooner gravitate towards that.
Oh, dude, thank you.
And so the space is actually like quite appreciated. I can hear that you could, even in the instrumental stuff that I've heard, you could actually have a vocalist come in and really choose their places for it. But it totally works without it as well, you know?
Oh, thanks, dude. Well, and half of those songs on that live EP were written originally. They did have vocals, so
Okay.
we changed some of the structures slightly,
Yeah.
but they were, dense enough and I guess complex enough where we could go, okay, it's not going to be a total snooze fest if you don't have a vocalist on this. Because there's some songs where it's like, I do miss a little bit of just being able to just throw down a groove.
I was going to just say that because like there's some instrumental bands that I grew up on. I'm trying to think of their names, but like Tortoise. Do you know Tortoise?
I've heard of them. I don't think I've checked them out though.
And not in a rush to change, man. Like but they're kind of almost in a atmospheric space of like instrumental sound. They're a band, but they're just cruising. And I think in this ADHD world where, like you say, every 10 seconds you've got to kind of keep people going, is almost at the expense of a true voice or an authentic voice. And so I think it's a conundrum, but I do think you should lean on the side of you guys and not the audience.
Yeah, and I appreciate you saying that because that's been something for us. Like nowadays, on Instagram and everything, you're just like begging people to give you the time of day, and it's just like if you're not catching their attention within 5 seconds, it's hopeless. And I'm like, what happened to letting to a slow burn?
Don't fall for that too.
Absolutely.
You're 24, right? 25?
Yeah, 25. Yeah.
Yeah, 25. Like I'm 42, and because you've kind of grown up in this sort of peak social media age, I see a lot with younger people online, and just basically almost like catering to that ADHD thing that we've got, but bringing the world back into this place of just slowing down and calming down and putting our most authentic version forward is definitely the most sustainable and longevity based thing that you can do for yourself. But for everyone else too, man.
Yeah.
Let's just kind of pull them all down a little bit, you know?
No, I totally agree. And it's interesting you say, and that's kind of been the thing is like, we're not, I mean, like I could rather be dead than be like, oh, POV, you've just landed on a band that mixes, it's like, whenever I see that, I'm just like, God, we've exhausted this, guys. Like, come on, like, but sometimes I guess it works. But it's also knowing, for the instrumental prog crowd, you're not really going to find them on TikTok. You know what I mean? It's also knowing where that demographic really is.
That's so true.
That's been our thing of trying to find where, because we did a couple shows earlier this year where we opened for do you know the band Wheel, the prog band out of Finland?
No, but I love the name.
Yeah, they're a bit Toolish. Like, I mean, they have vocals and stuff, but they're the kind of band where we play, open for them, and all the fans, it's like Opeth shirts, Tool shirts, like right in the crowd and so that was a tap-in. Like we did our set and people were really into it and we're like, oh my God, we found our people.
Cool.
But then you go and try and play a show by yourselves and nobody's, none of those same people are there because it's a different, especially in Miami, man. Like I don't know if it's the town for instrumental prog music, but we're flying the flag anyways.
Can I cross the bridge a little bit just to do with like you being you? Like, do you like? I would kind of assume, and this might be my ignorance, that you being you is an in to a lot of people anyway.
Yeah, for sure. I mean, that definitely opens the door.
And I don't know whether that's a good thing or bad thing in your eyes and something that you've wrestled with over your career, because obviously, and like we're not talking about having a dad who's just done something. We're talking about someone that's had an impact as big as he has. And I would kind of always just assume that there's a fascination with you on that level, which would always get at least 10 people through the door.
Yeah, I mean, yeah, I think you always, I mean, sometimes the demographic you're pulling at the show, you're like, I wish we were hitting that, on Spotify, like hitting that 18 to 35 demographic a bit more rather than like just fans of my dad, you know what I mean? It's not, it's not really the vibe.
Yeah, that's hilarious. That's funny how that's a problem, it's like, can we just have them a little bit younger?
Yeah, and look, and that's not to say, that's not to, put any sort of, like I'm super grateful for the fact that they are even interested in the first place, and
yeah, and you also, unfortunately, you also earned that because of you playing with him as well.
Yeah,
like talk about like getting the respect and the stripes from his audience, like directly in both like Genesis and Phil,
Absolutely. And the funny thing is there's a big difference between those audiences though, because a lot of the fans of my dad are like they love that I'm playing drums, and they're kind of like, and this is, I mean, I'm making a super broad generalization, but sometimes the Genesis fans, they're really hardcore Genesis fans, so they're immediately comparing everything that I do to Genesis. Or like sometimes I'll post a video online of like, and it doesn't sound anything like it, and they're like, this kind of sounds like Cinema Show, or this kind of sounds like Los Endos, and I'm like, not even close. But I guess, you know, they're trying to kind of.
How do you take those comments? Being in that space of almost like, and I'd hope, like, okay, I want to state at this point too that I want to ask you questions in the moment that are probably going to come from a place of ignorance more than anything. And like I said to you at the start of this, I wanted you I wanted to talk to Nic, the drummer, but I'm also curious about you wrestling with that thing as well. You know, with your dad, and you, like, to me, you've come out so stable and so lovely from what I've seen.
Thanks,
given
man.
that as well. And I'm just curious even about that, you know, like there's so many fascinations, in my opinion, that I don't think have been talked about, probably just because they're no one else's business. But I'm sort of curious about your journey with that comparison constantly. And I say all that saying that you're such a solid drummer in your own right as well.
No, I appreciate it, man. I mean, it's like, if really to get into it, I mean, to start off, my dad, when I grew up, super normal life. So it was not, I'm Phil Collins and I drive, you know, these insane cars and we live in a big house, like super normal. And he almost and now as I'm getting older and, you know, I'm proud of his career, sometimes it blows me away that he, you know, is so like,
was so normal.
Yeah, well, there was that, and also just so critical, and so like he doesn't understand necessarily the impact, and I think he has a bit of imposter syndrome every now and then of like doesn't quite know that people like him as much as they do, you know what I mean, and that they celebrate him as a drummer. I mean, it's crazy, but growing up, we had such a normal life, so I was brought up, you know, with he was super big on manners and treating people with respect and being kind, and also his crew and band have been with him. I mean, his tour manager, Pud, who I call Uncle Pud, he's not literally my uncle, but I've known him for my whole life. He started off as my dad's drum tech since 1975, and then he's still with him now. His manager, Tony Smith, started working with him, I think, 1971, 72.
So these are your family. These are your 5 dads, your 6 dads, your 7 dads, you know? That's incredible.
Yeah, and so I got used to, like, you know, if you take care of people, they'll take care of you. And just that idea of, you know, treating people with respect. And then obviously, as you know, I got older. When I was a kid, I didn't really think about who my dad was. I just enjoyed playing the drums. And then when I got the gig to do, it started off by playing a couple charity shows with him.
Yes.
And that was very kind of, you know, I was 14, 15. So I was just stoked to be there. We would do maybe 3, 4 songs. Maybe by the end we were doing 5. And then we did the US Open, which was the biggest thing we'd done. Even though we did 2 songs, it was like a big deal. And after that, we got home and he went, I'm thinking of going back on tour. Do you want to play drums with me? And I just was like, yes, absolutely. I didn't even think about the other side of it. And when it first happened, like immediately it must be nice getting a gig because your dad's Phil Collins. And in a way, I kind of could understand that perspective because I was like, well, I haven't proven anything, but I kind of used it as motivation to go and do my homework and to kind of be like, I'm going to play this show and you guys are going to have nothing to say because I've prepared.
And he must have seen your development as a player. And I'm guessing that he wouldn't have asked you to do the gig if he didn't think that you could represent the brand of the music as well as what you could. Like that's a massive sign off from the old band, you know?
No, absolutely. And it's funny because like now when I think about it now, it's a very different, I can actually really internalize it and see it that way. We had started the tour in like June of 2017. We did some rehearsals December 2016. And that was kind of like a bit of a, let's see how this goes. Because I think once he said, let's play, you know, what if Nic comes and does it? You know, the guys in the band, whether it was Lee Sklar, Daryl, Brad, like they knew, because I'd played with them a little bit, but it was like, can he do it for an actual full show, 90 minutes or 2 hours? And so that first time I think was really for them to kind of be like, oh, right, yeah, this does work. And, you know, and I'm so grateful to have grown up with those guys because the information and just like the inspiration they gave me, the guidance, they just welcomed me with open arms. It was not a vibe of oh, this is the boss's son. And also, I mean, the thing is my dad, he made a point of when I was at rehearsals or when we were on tour, yeah, when we're not playing or anything, like we're just hanging out, yeah, I'm his son. But when we were working, I was one of the guys in the band. And if he had something to say to me and if there's something was wrong, he was going to say it in front of everybody. And
Amazing.
it was like,
what a
yeah,
great learning tool from dad.
yeah, absolutely. He didn't treat me any differently at all.
So he did pull you up on some things and you were like, oh, okay, fine.
Yeah.
And you're a bratty teenager. I don't even want to do this.
Yeah, exactly. No, I mean, I did try to always make it a point, no matter who said, even if it was like Brad Cole, the MD, and some of the guys, if they gave me tips, I always wanted to make a point that the next time we played the song, it was sorted out. And that's been something that I've carried over until now. It's like, when you're attentive to the people you're working with, the musicians or the main artists, it's not about me. It's about serving the song and getting them comfortable as well.
That level of maturity, though, is something that you don't earn in the moment. That level of maturity for you, being so young, has been instilled in you by your parents. And so, like, going back to when you were younger, with that normalness that Phil, brought into the family home, he was still busy though, eh? Like he was still touring and coming and going, and I'm assuming you were going sometimes and not. And all is that sort of the way that it was in the younger years?
So when I was like 3 or 4, he did his last. It was like the final farewell tour, is what he called it, and that was supposed to be his last solo tour. And I spent that, like, my earliest memories come from there. Like, when you finally kind of gain consciousness, like the earliest I can go back is that tour. And I had a kit backstage, and I would watch the show and immediately run back and just start playing almost like the entire thing from back to front. And it would drive them nuts because they just come off stage 2.5 hours, and here's a 4-year-old dude making a racket, down.
Couldn't think of anything worse, man.
Yeah, no, I know. I feel for him now, especially. But the thing is, I mean, my dad did give me a couple tips as I was growing up. Like, we would have these things called like secret number 1 or secret number 2, and it was stuff like, keeping the hi-hat foot going if you're on the ride, like little things like that. But he was not hands-on, like, at all. So that was also part of, like, the pressure wasn't coming from a, like, oh, you're my son and you're gonna be this good. Like, if I didn't want to play drums, he would have been totally okay with it. There was never
for sure.
Yeah, there was never a push to do it. So it kind of felt like I was, I could do it on my terms and be comfortable with it. And even now, like, yeah, sometimes we'll nerd out together or I'll ask him for advice, but he'll rarely just tell me his opinion because he just wants me to do my own thing and be my own person and my own drummer.
That's amazing, man. What a testament to him. And do you mind me asking, like, obviously your mum was a rock as well?
Yeah, well, the thing is so my mom she's always been a huge supporter of what I do. And she's always been, like, trying to push me. She's like, she's always been like, she thinks I'm the best thing if I ever, you know what I mean? And I'm like, Mom, you got to relax. Like, it's a classic mom thing to do.
Yeah, chill out, Mom. Yeah.
But, after that tour, my parents got divorced. And so what was supposed to be his last solo tour, then 3 years later, he went out and did the Genesis final tour, or what we thought was going to be the final one. And so he was home for the majority of my childhood compared to, like, my older siblings where, he was so busy. So I did get a way more normal dad experience, but obviously there were some times where he would go away. He did, like, some stuff on Broadway with Tarzan when I was young for a couple months. So,
right.
But it could have been worse. You know what I mean? He was very much present in my life.
Yeah. And if I think about it because obviously, being a parent and a musician myself, one of the hardest things that I wrestle with, and I've been a parent since I found out I was having my son when I was 19. So I've been doing this for a long time. And the hardest thing to wrestle with for me personally is that, like, push and pull between touring and being home. I've left projects because they were getting too big, which meant I'd be away too long, or I've gone away for periods of time with big projects. And that in itself, even though the experience is incredible, has been at the expense of not being home. And I'm always just fascinated. It's an endless source of emotional inspiration, your family, and being away from them. I'm sure from Phil's perspective, it definitely helped him write a song or two,
Yeah.
It is quite an interesting conversation in terms of the normality that he was able to provide for you in and amongst all of that. And then even in the downtime, still being so big on the basics, man, like the manners and the respect and all those cool things. It's just so awesome to hear that, given the size of who he is and what he's done.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, and it was funny because I think because of him being so busy with my older siblings when they were growing up and maybe feeling like he'd missed some key moments, I think he made it a point to want to be home for my younger brother and I. So we had him around a lot, but then it got to a point where we're like, dude, you need to be on stage, man. Like, this is where you belong.
That's a big thing to turn off, eh?
Yeah. And especially when he had a, this is over 10 years ago now, when he had his, like an accident where now he's got drop foot, so he can't play drums anymore. I mean, that was a huge loss for him, where, of what you've done for so long being taken away. So us being on stage, it would be funny. I mean, the stories I have of him, are we going to be able to do this? And then we get on stage and he just turns it on, and you're just like, oh my God, like I don't even, because I'm the kind of guy who needs to be super practiced, super prepared, and he could just no rehearsal, could just roll up, and on stage he was just, who he is, and he had the audience.
A consummate professional and second nature.
Yeah, exactly.
I mean, it's staggering when you go through the catalog as well, which is so fascinating to me too, because the fact that you were able to dissect a lot of the parts, the ability that you have is to take on the information, but almost like add your own spin to it as well, but still respect the part.
Mm-hmm.
And I think that the way that your dad wrote is almost in the vein of the way that people put Neil Peart, and the fact that you were able to honor that to the nerds, mm-hmm. let's be honest, but also the songwriting as well, but also put yourself forward as, hey, I also have a voice within this as well. That's a hard balance, man.
Yeah, I mean, the thing with when I did his solo tour, so many of those songs I grew up with, on that tour that I told you about when I was a kid, but also just I'd take his iPod in the car and we'd be listening to his music. And I mean, I don't know if that drove him nuts or whether he enjoyed it, but that's
funny. Yeah.
Yeah. So I'd be like, and so much of it was just ingrained in my head. And naturally we're different drummers. We have different influences, but he'd been such a big part of my life and those songs specifically, where I kind of felt a bit more second nature. Of course, when you're actually going to prepare for a tour, you're going to go and do your homework and listen to the studio version versus all the live versions. But the Genesis stuff was a different experience. Some of the songs I knew, but then there were some songs like where you're like, oh man, this is a whole different
his drumming in early Genesis is insane. And I actually think that that's probably one of the things that he doesn't get recognized enough for, because obviously he had so much an impact as Genesis, as a songwriter going forward, post Peter Gabriel, but then also the solo stuff. But his drumming, man, in the early days, it's like so top tier prog drumming. It's insane.
I know. And the thing is I really got into that stuff of because so many of the songs we did, even if they were older songs, they'd be the kind of whatever 80s version, or they'd be an updated version where maybe, it wasn't as proggy. And because some of those early songs, and it's almost fusion drumming. Like he has such a influence from like Mahavishnu Orchestra and Billy Cobham.
Oh, back in New York City, like that's in Seven, and it's like total fusion. Mm-hmm. You're right. It's more fusion than prog.
Yeah. And so that's when the tour ended, when the Genesis tour ended, that's when I really started getting into that, and I was like, man, like I could have done more of this stuff on tour, but
oh man, the ride into play stuff, it's so busy, but I think the thing that cracks me up, two things: he gets away with murder, and the early drumming, he gets away with so much, but it works so well because he's so confident and convinced in the parts, and B, they were able to put vocals over it.
Mm-hmm. Exactly.
It's amazing.
Yeah. And it's funny though, I've had conversations with him about those early records. He goes, I can kind of listen to some of the Peter stuff, but he's like, I can't really deal, when I became the singer, that early stuff, I can't listen to it. Sometimes he's like, the drumming, he's like, Firth the Fifth, he goes, yeah, the timing on that, I can't listen to it. I'm like, dude, who cares about the timing?
Yeah,
I was like,
wow. Fascinating. Oh, that's so buzzy. So can I ask, so from your perspective, from a fan of the music, which era do you prefer, as the early Genesis, or maybe like a little bit later Genesis, or the Phil stuff? Like just as a musician, as a fan of music first, not as a drummer, like in terms of songwriting and stuff, which era do you prefer?
It's a great question. I mean, my favorite album of the Genesis album, it's between either Duke or Selling England by the Pound for very different reasons. Like,
okay,
Duke is a bit more up my alley in that like it was a bit more rockin' and you had the big drums. I just think Selling England is just like brilliant, like the songwriting, and it's got that fusion approach. It was very different, but a lot of those songs, some of the songs on, on the Lamb, for example, I always found I enjoyed them better, like the live versions that they maybe did 10 years later, where, a song like In the Cage all of a sudden had a way more balls to it. And it was
Gotcha.
just like, oh, this is. So I like grew up with In the Cage and like the Cinema Show medley. Like that was my favorite thing growing up.
Cool.
That was the one song when we did the tour. I was like, we got to do Cinema Show. I won't make any other suggestions. I'll let you do it, but please let me do this one.
Yeah.
So it really kind of depends, but I think, it's just different. There's something from each era that I really enjoy for what it is,
What about the drumming perspective then? Like just solely the drumming, you're like, oh, damn, go Dad.
I think that like kind of late Steve Hackett and then early them becoming a three-piece. So kind of Wind and Wuthering or Trick of the Tail, Wind and Wuthering, and then maybe like up until Duke.
Yeah.
I think that's my favorite drumming of his on the Genesis stuff. Because, and then obviously we, as you go on, there's different kind of things, but that to me was like the perfect blend. It's the middle ground between the fusion stuff and the big gated stuff. It was like, it was that crossing between. So that's probably my favorite, but it's a very different, with the Genesis stuff when there's like looking at it as a drummer, but then some of the later stuff or even his solo stuff, it's looking at the drums as more a songwriter and part of the song.
Gotcha.
So the role kind of changes there a little bit. So there's something, there's influence there on kind of always really.
Yeah. And let's be honest, because of the breadth of catalog, of course, there's going to be elements of everything that you can say that you love, like I'm a massive fan of his drumming, but one of my favorite songs is Against All Odds, but the Live Aid version when it's just him on the piano and he hits that bung note.
Yeah.
That one bung, like that performance honestly breaks my heart every time, but it's hearing it a cappella and not even a cappella, just him and the piano, is one of my favorite Phil moments of all time. Can I ask you also, I want to put this in two parts. When did you sort of notice that he was who he was? And then kind of on the tail of that, when you started playing with him, did you realize the bigness of it? And how did you deal with that? Because you went straight into big gigs as a teenager. And were you just kind of like, because you grew up with it, it almost seemed like quite normal to be in that situation? Because it seems like a lot for a young man to be able to handle, or even someone that's 20 years your senior at the time, to walk in and do some of those gigs with someone of his prestige?
Yeah, I mean, so to answer the first part, I grew up watching him play, so I knew that's what he did. Now I didn't know like, oh, he's Phil Collins and this, these are his records and this is what he's done, but I just knew that what he did was he played in front of people and he was a musician and a singer. And then obviously, you grow up with, sometimes you go on vacation and somebody's asking for a photo with him. So you start to kind of, he's important enough where somebody's asking him. But again, he lived such an unassuming life, that's such a normal life that it wasn't over the top. And then when we started doing his tour, I remember the first show being a little nervous, but I think I was very young and just happy to be there and just so excited that maybe the magnitude didn't quite hit me of like how long it had been since he'd done a real solo show. But I remember that first show we did was it was in Liverpool, was an arena in Liverpool, and I'd never done an arena before. So it was the biggest thing I'd ever done. And I was like, wow, this is a lot. But after the first song, I felt okay about it.
How old were you?
I was 16.
And so you were doing the charity event gigs, which obviously to a smaller, like fundraising events and stuff. And so that was what, your 2 year, 300 people, 400 people sort of thing. And then you do the tennis.
Yeah, maybe we did like 2 theater shows on some of the charity events that I probably started that when I was 14 or 15. And then the US Open, I was 15. So there was a lot of people there, but it was only 2 songs, kind of known. It didn't feel like a proper show. When we did that first show of the tour, it was like, oh man, this is serious. Like even the walk.
That's when it locked in and you were like, wow.
Yeah. And the walk up to the stage, you're like, oh my God, like this is legit. You know what I mean? This is real stuff. But honestly, for that one, I was comfortable with the material. I was comfortable with the guys, and I was still growing up where you're kind of, you're an angsty teenager. So you're kind of just like, you're not really thinking about all these like really deep things. But I remember at the beginning of the Genesis tour was when I was like, oh, I'm nervous because I know that this is a big deal.
So how old were you then?
That one, I was 20 by that point.
Oh yeah,
Um,
okay. It's almost like ignorance is bliss in some ways, eh? So when you're 16, you're like you can take it all in because you haven't experienced enough to know what that really means. Almost,
mhm.
obviously you do, but there is an ignorance energy that comes with it. Being a little bit older, a little bit wiser, and obviously you've gone a little bit deeper in his playing and developed as a player yourself, and maybe even got a little bit more hip to like the way the world was viewing him as a drummer and all these things. You're like, oh whoa, okay, we're like, wow.
Yeah, and even just getting more into the technical aspect of drumming and like, oh, like because at first you're just I'm playing. It felt very natural, whereas now I'm going, we're talking odd time signatures, we're talking like complex parts. So I'm more aware of what it's taking to play these parts. So I'm also more aware of the fact that I could mess it up.
Yes.
And the fact that, Genesis had, had been there a big deal. And that was kind of what I was saying earlier about with the fans is that, that a lot of the fans want to hear the songs a specific way. They, it's a big deal to them. So
Similar to the Neil Peart thing, they want to hear it as it is.
exactly. So I felt a bit more, okay, you got to, you'd see some guys doing the air drumming stuff. And obviously I'm lucky enough that if a song, for example, we never played it live, but we rehearsed the musical box, like the end of it. And I remember playing it exactly like the record and Tony Banks being like, that's great, Nick, but like, that's too 1971, man. You need to like, yeah, it's too like old prog.
Wow.
And I was like, okay, I'll modernize. They always kind of moved with the times. And I think that's the misconception with Genesis is they are like they're.
I mean, because the band evolved, it's almost became two bands in some ways. The early stuff and the later stuff. In terms of obviously the songwriting and whatnot, is that kind of what he's referring to, like the approach in the early days versus what it matured into? To use it, not to use that word maturely, but you know what I mean?
Yeah, kind of. I mean, like, because it wasn't like they were a prog band who decided, oh, we're going to sell out and make pop music. They were just like, we were doing that stuff because we were into it at that time. And then we changed interests and started listening to other stuff. And so it was more gradual. It wasn't so.
Yeah.
Where they got
no
to.
line in the sand.
Exactly. Where they got to was just where it felt right. And it's
called evolution.
Yeah, exactly. It was for like Mike was saying, he's like the difference. He went to go see Yes, and he told me that he goes, they're musicians, and you can tell. He goes, whereas we were songwriters, we were more. It was a different mentality to it, which I don't know. It was interesting to hear him kind of say that, but to kind of long round way of saying that the Genesis stuff was, I definitely felt a bit more pressure with it, just knowing that there was a bit more expectation, and they're a big drum band.
Yes.
So I knew people were going to, there's going to be a lot of eyes on me. And
can we talk about that a little bit?
Yeah, absolutely.
The first part is, did he pull you up on any of the your interpretations of Genesis parts, or was he just in full confidence and would leave it to maybe the MD or someone else? Like, would he get involved in you learning those parts on any level?
So with the Genesis stuff, there was no MD. Like, they're just a band, and so it's the three. It's like having three bosses, really. The three main guys.
Yeah, gotcha.
And so they came up with a set list, and a lot of it was going to be stuff that they had done either on like their 91 tour, 92 tour, or the last tour they did. So I was very familiar with that. So a lot of my parts are pretty much interpretations of the live versions.
Gotcha.
Not so much like going back way to like the record versions. There was 3 songs that I remember asking my dad, hey, can you come upstairs to the drum room? Because I was still living at home at the time, and being like, can you just hear me play these? Tell me if you've got any pointers. He lasted one song and then went, yeah, you're fine now. And then he left. I was like, okay. This didn't really help, man.
That's been a fascinating part of like hearing you talk about this in the past, is that he's almost like I've heard you say that he almost doesn't want to talk about these things much or spend too much time in that kind of headspace. And that's quite fascinating. Even when you're like, hey, Dad, can you tell me, like, am I doing this right? And he's like, it's fine.
Yeah, I mean, he picks his moments, because then there's sometimes where he's getting so locked in on like the smallest detail.
Okay, well, what's an example of that then? Give me like something where he was really like, no, it has to be this.
So like, do you know the song No Son of Mine?
Yeah, oh yeah. So what a song.
Yeah, right. So right before, in the second verse, he does this thing, like it goes, it's like on the hi-hat, it's like it's like a Stuart Copeland thing to him, is what he sees it as. It's literally just that long. And that was one thing. He was like, "Are you doing that? You make sure you're doing that part. That's a good thing, right?" That,
Wow.
he wouldn't care. Yeah, he wouldn't care about the 7/8, thing. He was just like, so he would find his moments to really get specific about certain things. And then, when we started going through the songs of the set list, there was one song, Duchess, that they hadn't done in a while. And I went, that was one of my favorite songs from listening to Duke. So that was really cool when Tony Banks was like, "Man, I love hearing you play that because you're playing it like the record. Like I've never heard it played the way it was supposed to." And I think maybe a comfort that Tony and Mike had, which is very flattering to me, was that they always said it sounds like having, a young version of your dad, not necessarily the prog version, but like a young version of your dad on stage. And I was like, wow, that's, that meant the world to me.
That's so cool, man. You fall into this really small category of sons of drummers. You've got Zach from Ringo, you've got Max from Mike Portnoy, you've got Jason from John Bonham, and you've got Nick from Phil. And that's and all those names that I mentioned are all great drummers as well. And to just know that you're getting that sort of validation from people that are so well tuned to know what they know,
Yeah,
it's amazing, man. With the legacy that carries as well, and of that reputation, that's so cool, man.
No, that's really kind, man, and it really did mean the world to me to hear that from them, because at the end of the day, my job was to make them feel comfortable with their parts. The parts aren't easy things, so I just wanted to make sure that I did my homework so that the drums were taken care of, and you guys worry about doing your thing. But I was always welcoming like advice, criticism, whatever it was. There were some songs, I think a big thing was my dad not playing drums. We weren't going to do as much instrumental stuff as we could have, or they had in the past. So like they had told me to learn the End of Supper's Ready, the Apocalypse in 9/8 part onwards. And that, when you don't have two drummers, I remember learning it. And that was one where I remember asking my dad, "How do I do this?" And he was like, "Look, that was just my take on that particular day. I just remember, he's like, know the riff, and that's all you got to know. And the rest is playing around it." But when you're trying to learn or play somebody's improvisation, it's a very difficult thing to do. And so some of the songs, we didn't even rehearse that one, but because my dad wasn't going to be there, and like a song like Los Endos, like they kind of decided to stray away from the ones that were so distinct my dad.
Gotcha.
You know what I mean? Like very clearly his playing. So, but whether there were some songs that just were easy for me to grasp because I'd listened to them for a while, like Cinema Show. And then there were songs like Firth the Fifth, which were like, oh man, there's a lot to take in here. So,
for such a young drummer too, dude, it's a real testament to your development. And I know you've spoken about your drum tutor. I can't remember his name, but I've heard you mention him before, a guy that taught you for a while. I mean, man, hats off to that dude. First of all, he's teaching Phil Collins' son, but secondly, he gave you such a strong, competent foundation to be able to even come into this stuff maturely.
Yeah. When I moved to Miami, I met JP, that's his name, JP Espirito Santo, and he really was just there to deliver a drum kit for me. Like I'd got this Mapex My Identity kit. It was terrible color. It was like black and red. Like,
oh, classic. I remember those.
yeah. I didn't even care about what the wood was. I was just like, I want the color. That was all that mattered to me. And he ended up, my dad asked him if he gave lessons, and he did. And for the first couple years, he was the one who taught me technique. My dad never taught me technique. So getting to a pad, learning.
So how old were you when you were getting lessons from him?
I was like 12 or 13.
Okay, cool. And so he's on the pad with you and he's taking you through that stuff.
Yeah. And then also try to teach me different Latin grooves, which that was a funny thing because I remember learning them being like, why am I learning bossa nova? Why am I learning samba? Like just being like, this is so stupid. I want to go and play Chili Peppers or Foo Fighter songs, And then as I got older and I got into Tool, I went, oh, I get it now. It's like it was the limb independence was really what it was.
Yes,
and all of a sudden it was clicking.
There's something too that I've noticed as someone I've taken a massive interest in mechanics and technique over the years and my own interpretation of it. And something that I've realized is that by accessing mechanics and technique, you're just making those things easier. Mm-hmm. Like they're all interpretations of reorchestrated mechanics, whether it's Latin or whatever. But the sooner you can get onto the technique side of it, separate from the context, the easier it is going to be coming into that context because it's all about a mechanic or independence limitation,
Absolutely. And that was the thing where I was like, thank God I'd been able to just, because at first the idea of doing completely different rhythms with both your legs intentionally, for example, where it's not
Yeah.
like you just because you're playing a groove, like you're intentionally doing something. That was a lot to take in. And I remember the first time I was able to do it, I was on a school trip and I wasn't listening to anything they were saying. I was just like trying to do bossa nova with my feet, and just even the doom, 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 and then
Mm.
doing like the different pattern with your snare. Um, and but then it really became useful, and then I got to a point where I got busier, and we both kind of did, and I started kind of learning more hands on by just doing it, and then like
And
this.
listening and whatnot.
Yeah.
So you've talked about Deftones. You've talked in other conversations. You've talked about obviously Danny Carey as well. Tell me some of the other guys. I know you've got this like history based foundation through 70s, 80s rock and whatnot. But I want to know about your modern influences. The guys that really were you like your Nic Collins influences.
Yeah, so I mean, it started off as a kid. I mean, yeah, we the first guy I was told to listen to, who's not modern, but it was John Bonham, was my dad was like, go listen to When the Levee Breaks, and that
Cool.
changed my life from there. But then my biggest heroes as a teenager were Chad Smith and Taylor Hawkins.
Oh, cool.
Yeah, they were my like everything, dude. I wanted to be those guys. They made me want to be in a band. Um, and I just obsessed over those records when I was a kid.
So what era of Chad are you into?
Now it's Blood Sugar is my favorite era
My
of the
man.
Chili Peppers. You know what I mean? That's just in general.
The best sounding drum kit possibly of all time on that album.
Yeah, it's unreal. And just the songs, like to me, that's just like the best version of the Chili Peppers. But as a kid, I was listening to all of it, man. I was Stadium Arcadium, Californication. I did the deep dive on all the records. I watched all the documentaries. I knew everything about the band. Like I really was obsessed. And it was the same thing with Foo Fighters. Like now, um, my favorite Foo Fighters album is There Is Nothing Left to Lose.
Oh, great album.
But yeah, the first one that Taylor actually played on.
Mm.
Although I think Color in the Shape is probably the best Foo Fighters record, but I just would watch their live videos, and it was so inspiring. Like there was the energy there was the showmanship, as well as like playing the songs, and
Almost a lightheartedness as well.
yeah, exactly.
Obviously the comic, the videos, like they almost like they were happy to have fun, which is really cool.
Yeah, and that was the thing. It made me want to be in that environment. I was like, dude, I get to being in a band with your best friends. Like this is the coolest thing. And that was what I saw the Chili Peppers as, and Foo Fighters. It was like high octane shows, like And I was lucky enough to meet Taylor and actually develop a bit of a friendship with him. And he passed away the night before, or the night before. So I found out the morning of the last Genesis show.
Oh,
And I was just a complete wreck that day. I was like, oh my God, like A, we're doing the last show. And then B, I was like, Taylor's gone. Like it was a real kind of weird
that's
thing.
rough, man.
Yeah, but he was just such a big inspiration, and somebody that honestly, when we started talking and he would just even offer to give me advice or just like offer to talk to me. I mean, I remember when I got COVID on the Genesis tour on the first leg, and he called me while I was quarantining, me like, dude, you got COVID, man. Like, and I was like, if I would have told my, my 14-year-old self that Taylor Hawkins would be calling me when I had COVID,
Oh, and man, his playing with Alanis, even pre Foo Fighters, like his pocket and like super tight snare, super funky hi hat work, but his touring with Alanis Morissette, which is kind of like how I found him. I just grew up on Alanis and probably just being a little bit older, and then to go into the Foo Fighters, which is almost like two different players, but not the physicality.
Yeah.
Like the way that you'd see him playing with Alanis, the arms are everywhere, the cymbals are super high. He's like, really boisterous as a player. And then in Foo's, like the sound was so different, obviously because Dave was saying we're doing this thing now, but man, he's got such great feel.
Yeah, no, absolutely. And he just also with him and Chad, it was how they were such big fans of music history that it made me want to learn about that as well. And where is this coming from? And Taylor, he had the two concert toms up, which a bit of it was Roger Taylor, but a big part of it was my dad. And I actually remember him and Dave sent my dad a really nice email. My dad was struggling with some stuff when I was a kid, and they were like, dude, heard you're not doing so great. Wanted to let you know that we love you. And Taylor was like, I'm rocking the concert toms every single night for you. And I was like, man. And I was such a big fan of Taylor. I went, that's because of you that he's doing the concert toms. Like, it was this weird moment of like, I was doing it because of Taylor. I wasn't even doing it because of you. And
That's hilarious.
Obviously, as I got older, it's like now it's become like part of the family crest almost to just at least have the two up there.
Yeah, so because I noticed, because you still have them in your setup. So that was an ode to Taylor for you, but in actual fact, it's a nice continuation from the family line as well.
Yeah, exactly. And then, from there, obviously I got into Dave Grohl's playing, was a big fan of his. Then I was really just big into some of the 90s bands. So like, Jimmy Chamberlain from Smashing Pumpkins was a huge influence. And
Talking
still
about
is.
the hi-hat pulsing, he's the king of that.
And
that left leg.
Yeah, Unreal Groove as well. Just like,
did you ever listen to his solo stuff, the Jimmy Chamberlain complex?
No, I haven't.
You should check it out. It's instrumental, and it's like everything you love about Jimmy in a fusion sense.
Okay.
It's fantastic, man.
Oh, dude, absolutely. I'll definitely check it out. He's but he was such a great player and really nice guy as well, but he's just such a, like, I don't know, I just loved the parts he was able to write for those songs, and it just to me made the Smashing Pumpkins stand out as a band, and like the drumming is such a big part of those first couple albums.
Yeah.
And then I got, I'm going like for like the big influences that really made it mark. Gavin Harrison, when I started getting into Porcupine Tree, was because for a while as a kid I was a single pedal guy. Between my dad, Bonham, Taylor, Chad, it was single pedal was all I was doing. And then Gavin was because I used to have this misconception that like if you could only have double kick if you were like in a death metal band or something like that,
or you were cheating.
Yeah, exactly. Or you're just trying to do Bonham triplets, but you just can't, so you're doing it with two pedals.
Yeah.
But then I heard Gavin play, and I was like, whoa, like this is different. It's tasteful. It's like impressive, yet there's so much groove and feel. And his drum sound, I mean, talk about one of the best drum sounds of all time. I don't know what he's doing to those drums to get them so.
Sonor, I like that there, man. Sonor, I mean, you look at all the artists that play Sonor, you look at your Steve Smith, Jojo Mayer, like Thomas Hark, like all these guys, Danny Carey, obviously. Sonor has, I see, like they're like fine furniture almost, their tone is, they're like the sort of drums you'd want to sample for, drum sample libraries or whatever. Yeah. But the thing with Gavin too is he opened up a lot of drummers, I think, to songwriting, but facility within it in a tasteful way.
Yeah. Exactly. And that was the thing for me. I was like, he's writing songs, and Porcupine Tree were kind of my gateway into more modern prog bands that weren't like the old, Genesis, Yes, King Crimson, those kinds of bands. And then Danny Carey came along, and that changed my life completely. And that was when I was like, all right, double pedal is coming on. So I've only been playing double kick for like 5 years probably, because that was when I got into Tool and into Porcupine Tree, and felt like, okay, now I can understand how to use it. And then once you do that, you're in it, and then you start getting into Gojira, for example. So Mario from Gojira is like a huge influence now.
I've only really been getting into Gojira in recent times. I'm being a Tool guy as well, and Meshuggah, and like sort of the earlier guys. I sort of missed them, and I missed Opeth, even though they're an older band. I just didn't. They just didn't come into my line of vision. You know how sometimes you just miss bands; they just sort of go by you. Yeah. But Gojira, man, oh my man, I've gone through a lot of their stuff now, and each time I listen to it, the love grows more. When you get to my age, dude, it's really hard to fall in love with music. That like for some reason you get locked into your box, not music but new music. And man, he is not hard, and that band is not hard to get into at all. It's fantastic.
Yeah, and I saw them live, and I was blown away with how tight they were. Like he's just a monster. I mean, the drum sounds are amazing on the records, but just the parts, so creative. Yet, I mean, they're complicated, but they're parts. They're not just like,
I know he writes so intelligently, and I've followed their arc of their production too, because probably similar to you, because you've got your studio and you've been exploring engineering, and as a drummer it's much harder because we have such a higher buy-in when it comes to producing and engineering. Obviously you can't just plug a line into an interface with your guitar and you're away. You've got like 13, 14, 15, 16 channels, so you have to get better at it. And so going through that journey myself has given me such a wider interest in listening from that perspective, and then following bands' catalogs in chronological order and listening to the evolution of production. And Gojira is a great example of that. Like their early stuff, it sounds fantastic for the rawness of it, and then listening to it become this like incredibly well produced and well engineered machine as well, without losing, in my opinion, that raw energy at the very least, I love listening with those ears now that I've just sort of acquired over time, just proxy of doing this, like recording things.
Absolutely. And by the way, I mean, your videos, like every time I'm trying to mix my own drums, I'm like, dude, how do I get them to sound like Stan's drums? It's like
oh, dude, man, like you said earlier, mixing is so hard. And I think the problem is that because I did a lot of mixing, obviously I mix a lot of my own on my own, right? So, and then I started mixing in context of music, and it completely threw everything out the window. I actually realized I was mixing completely wrong when it comes to context of music because of frequencies and balance between where everything sits. And so I had to kind of relearn again. But I honestly feel like the more I learn, A, the less I know, but also B, the less I actually need to be as fastidious. For some reason, when I was getting into it, everything needed to be perfect, the mic position and all this sort of stuff. And you've got to go through this process to almost learn. You've got to learn the rules so that you can almost let them go in a lot of ways. Yeah. And now I'm just really schlunky with the way that I set things up and stuff. I think it just comes with that maybe confidence in knowing something, but I do feel like I know less than I've ever known, ironically, because the rabbit hole's so much deeper now.
Yeah, and it's also just like there's no rules really. No. Like I think, especially as a drummer, you're going, oh, don't like that's too big of an EQ boost on my snare. Like it's almost like it feels like an insult to yourself on how you tuned it. It's like, who cares if it sounds good? It sounds good.
Yeah,
nowadays,
yeah. And sounding good is perspective, right? And it's all about context. And one, you know Sylvia Massey, being a Tool fan, you'll know that she's she engineered Undertow, and she put out a great book on engineering. It's almost like, so it's her sort of concepts about how to record bands and stuff. And she puts it that way too. She's like, honestly, anything works in context. It's about the confidence behind what you're delivering. So putting mics, and I mean, your dad's a great example of that. He made a big impact on the way that people recorded drums through a lot of like kind of just mucking around and ignorance almost in some places, or just trying to solve problems through weird ways, and that's what I've learned too, is that, especially because I do 2 mic videos out in the main room, and what I've realized is that a really good sounding room can almost polish any turd,
Yeah.
Whether it's the hardware, whether it's the mics, whether it's the kit. Not that I have any quality issues with that stuff, but it's just amazing how forgiving a good sounding room can be for a recording.
Totally. No, and that's the thing. It's like when I was talking about the live EP, it's like you feel the constraints immediately when you hear it, and then you could just be in a room and everything's raw, and you're like, wow, this sounds amazing. This sounds massive. And even today, I was trying to work on a bit of drum mixing stuff, and like what you said of like, sometimes you just, I'm going to just do this randomly, listen to it in the context. And if all of a sudden the kick starts getting in a zone, I don't care what I've done to get here. But you kind of, it's a bit more, I guess, you're following your instincts rather than following a rule book, which has been, kind of helpful. But I think nowadays, like with all these drummers that I've been mentioning, it was that a big influence was the playing, but a big influence was the drum sounds. I mean, we talked, Abe from Deftones. It was like, dude, this is what I want my snare to sound like.
So you're a Terry Date fan then?
Yeah, I love his stuff. I also, I really like I don't know how to say his last name, Nic Raskalinix. He's another one of the Deftones.
Oh yeah, I'm not even going to try and say it.
Yeah. But I just loved the Abe sound. It's so distinct, man. And that's what I love the most, really, with all the drummers, whether it's Danny, Gavin, Abe, and even like, there's obviously some of the older guys that I love because we were talking about current drummers, but like Jeff Porcaro is one of my favorite drummers of all time. And my favorite thing is when a drummer has a distinct sound and it goes above the playing. It's like, and that's what I'm kind of trying to figure out myself. I'm not even close to finding that yet, but like that thing that goes, it's a Jeff track, or it's an Abe snare, when you hear it.
That's a lifetime journey too, man. Ever evolving. The evolution of sound, obviously. But Jeff's an interesting one just because of how iconic. I mean, he's kind of like a rite of passage too. You have to go through the Jeff thing if you want to become any sort of quality, whether it's as a songwriter, because he was always so adamant about not being a soloist. He would even say, I'll never do a solo at a clinic and whatnot. So his taste for songwriting was just so apparent. Actually, my wife and I watched the Michael movie the other day, and it was one thing that I just wish they would have leaned into a little bit more, was at least talk about the musicianship behind the songs, especially on such iconic albums, like Jeff's playing on Beat It and whatnot.
The other one was John Theodore. We touched upon Mars Volta a little bit. So he was like, when I heard Deloused, I was like, life changing. And also Francis the Mute, and then forgetting the name of
Ambidextrous.
yeah, exactly. That's the third record, but it just, and then because I originally just knew John as Queens of the Stone Age because I saw them, and that's when I saw him live. So I didn't even know that he had that in his locker.
Wow, you found him through that first.
Yeah, exactly. And then I went, dude, where has this been my whole life? And then the other one is Steve Judd from Carnival.
Oh, Steve, great.
Oh man, those records again, like I put Sound Awake and Themata like in the Lateralis and Anima conversation when it comes to like my importance to me, and the drum sound on that, my god, like the playing the parts.
Yeah.
And I love the new record. Like it was just like one of honestly a top 5 band for me. So like he was huge, and that was more of a recent, in the last kind of 3 or 4 years that I really discovered them and his playing specifically.
And you go back and you're like, well, they were doing that in the late 2010 or late 20 noughts,
Yeah.
and then you're like, man, the parts are so developed, and they're such a mature band in that progressive songwriting sense because they have the vocals as well, but they've been doing it for ages, man.
Yeah.
Well ahead of their time.
Absolutely. And that was also a big thing of, it felt like songs. It felt like, and that was to me really the perfect blend of progressive, kind of, I guess intention, but yet also being like, these are songs. We're not trying, like if I need to simplify things because the vocal's going to take the main, is going to be the main focal point, like that's what we're going to do. And that's what really inspires me the most. And my favorite probably thing about those bands and music in general is when you're able to find that blend of the musicianship, yet also being like, it feels necessary, and it doesn't feel like you're just throwing chops in for no reason,
gratuitous or yeah. And that is such a fine line. And one thing I like about Carnival too is you could hear that they were influenced by bands, but they do not sound like their influences. Even straight off the bat, I'm like, oh yeah, I can hear that of the music that was relevant and maybe a little bit prior to that time, but they came in with a sound.
Yeah, exactly. And you can still, and it's just, they sound like them.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? It's like they have a thing where just certain tendencies, and sometimes when I'm with my band and we're like, there's sometimes what would Tool do, and it's like, what would Carnival do?
Yeah, what would Carnival do?
Yeah, exactly.
What would Steve do? And Steve's great too because he's such a he actually has an auntie in the town that I live in, and so when he was here at the start of the year, we had a coffee together, and just another reminder of just how humble and sweet and reserved and like super chill, critical, that whole self-deprecating thing that a lot of great players are, he's a really cool. I'm going to definitely make a point of him listening to this so that he knows that you love his work.
Oh, that's kind, man. I mean, I've exchanged a couple messages on Instagram and told him I'm such a big fan.
Oh, cool. Can I talk to you a little bit, just to shift gears now, about your band and like what your goals are? Like, I know we've already spoken about what you're up to with Better Strangers already, but what do you like? Look, man, I mean, given the experiences that you've been fortunate enough to have, and being such a developed player still at such an early part of your career, I'd say too, 25 is very different to 42. Trust me. What are your goals, man? And where are you going with your band, and what are you up to? And I'm just sort of curious about, influences right now for you, like, guys that you're coming across, and just what you're up to as a player currently and moving forward, what you want to do and whatnot.
As far as like goals and stuff, so at the core of it, I want to be in a band and write songs as a drummer, but more to be a part of songs rather than just. That's been the thing with the prog version, or the instrumental version rather, of Better Strangers, is like finding that balance of like, okay, we do know we're instrumental, so you kind of got to like, almost not show off is the wrong word, but it's, instrumental music currently is kind of in that vein, you know what I mean?
Yes.
And so, as far as goals, I think we're developing our thing. I'm also letting the band go down the course of wherever the band goes. We're figuring things out, whether a singer comes along, who knows, you know what I mean? Like, that's something that we're super open to and willing to do. But at the moment, let's just, we've been in the studio and just kind of trying to put together a body of work that I can be proud of just on my own, I've kind of let go of any sort of expectation of, I had somebody, I was just in Ohio for like this sessions panel thing, and somebody asked me if I expect, do I pressure myself or expect like the same level of success that my dad had? And I went, no, I don't even think about that. That is so, like, if it happens, amazing, but I can't compare myself to, where that went. Like, we're two different people. He ended up being a solo artist and doing what he did. Like, I don't think that I will be able to go, but who knows? You know what I mean? Like, I never say never. You know what I mean?
100%. Do you sing, man? I know you said you play piano and guitar. So two questions: do you write melodies and chords for your band, and do you sing, man? Do you have the golden pipes? Are you hiding them from us?
I'm honestly, I'm going on a bit of a self-discovery journey to trying to figure it out. I don't sing. I used to sing backing vocals, but I'm trying to get a bit more comfortable with it to just see, because,
Can you sing?
I can, for my opinion is that I can sing, but I don't have a lead singer voice. Like, I can sing notes, but I don't feel like I'm a main guy. That's where I'm at the moment.
Yeah, but that could still mean that you have like a secret amazing voice in there, because a lot of great vocalists aren't traditional singers, but they're great vocalists,
Yeah, well, we'll see. My dad's been pushing me about it. He's like, "Come on,
has
just
he?
try it." Yeah, he's like, just try it, dude. Just, But I think it's a big part of that is, for example, drumming's been a nurtured thing in my life since I was a kid. I used to, whereas singing's always been the thing I've avoided because, and I've been followed by the whole.
Okay, hang on. When you say you've avoided it, are you so purposefully you haven't kind of gone there?
It's more, I think I've been afraid to do it, and then I didn't. And I always was like, I'd rather not. I'd rather just be the drummer. But in between always hearing like, oh, your dad was the drummer and then he became the singer. Like that's always been I'm like, God, if I do that, I'm never gonna, now I'm, everything's just gonna, like, everything I've been trying to, not even trying to avoid, because that sounds wrong, because I really haven't avoided it. But I just mean the thing that's been following me around all of a sudden becomes true. You're like, oh God, here we go.
That is so funny, man. Because I mean, the example that I think of is Jeff Buckley avoiding singing for years in spite of his dad, Tim Buckley.
Mm-hmm.
And then when he just wanted to pursue guitar, and because the thing with Jeff that a lot of people don't realize is he's busy and really fantastic, but he was a shredder too. The guy could play.
Mm-hmm.
And then finally he was like, he gave into it, and then look what you get. One of the greatest singers of all time. Are you hiding that from us, man?
I mean, I hope so, man. I hope.
Yeah. You're like, well, actually, now that you mention it, I'm pretty damn good.
No, I'm definitely trying to convince myself, but I'm just giving it a go and seeing. And in the meantime, man, like I do enjoy doing the touring stuff for other people. Like, I've been playing with Mike and the Mechanics, which.
Can we talk a little bit about that as well, bro? Because sorry to cut you off,
no.
But I do want to at least flesh that out a little bit. What a band. I mean, I went through their Spotify because I noticed you said, it's surprising when I joined them, I didn't realize how many big songs they had. So on that note, I went through their material and I was like, oh, wow. Yeah. Oh, that song. They were almost like the sort of band that popped up in every 80s and 90s movie during the montage or something.
Exactly.
But there were like at least 8 or 9 songs where I was like, holy shit, man, I know all these songs. It's incredible. Which must have been so much fun to play those songs with the band.
Yeah, and the thing, what's great, I mean, on one side, I think part of that is like, because the band now is, other than Mike, is not the same. Like, Paul Carrick's not in the band, and obviously Paul Young passed away.
Yeah.
But it almost felt like they took a break for a while, and people kind of forgot about them, other than the people who knew. Like, it's not like they're a band where the younger generation were getting, like we're seeing them because
we're getting hip to
they
them,
weren't playing.
Yeah.
And so now you're seeing it a bit more. Like, I think there was like the movie about Michael Jordan signing the Nike contract, like, had All I Need Is a Miracle in it, and I was like, wow,
what a song.
Yeah, it was pretty funny, but they're such a great group of guys. I met them because they did a couple shows opening for my dad's tour. I wasn't playing with the Mechanics yet, but I got to know some of the guys.
Were you playing with your dad at that point?
Yeah, I was doing that.
Yeah, okay.
And then obviously we did the Genesis tour, so I got to know Mike really well. And then he was going on tour in 2023, but Gary Wallace, who'd played drums with them for a while, was going into surgery, and so Mike asked me if I'd fill in, and I was like, yeah, sure. And that was, on one side, I was really honored that he would want me to do more stuff with him. That he enjoyed playing with me like that. And I was like, absolutely. But it was also very not out of my comfort zone, but previously, I knew all of my dad's band and the crew.
This is like your first session gig, bro, getting hired as
Yeah.
Nic that can play the drums. That's so cool.
Exactly. And it's like, you're not playing the concert tom kit, you're playing your kit. And the cool thing with them is obviously, in addition to being really sweet guys and super talented, like Roachford, the singer, unreal voice, and he's also a great keyboard player. And then Tim Howard's the other singer. So they've really, done a great job of, tributing in a way Paul Carrick and Paul Young, but also really doing their own thing. And when they regrouped in 2012 or 2011, they started writing new songs. So we do a couple of the newer tracks as well as like the
cool.
kind of hits from the 80s. But the cool thing with that was Mike was like, look, if make sure you know the songs, and there's a couple songs that need distinct fills, but really have fun, do your thing. Just don't make it unnecessarily difficult, throw in a fill with like some crazy subdivision. He's like, we need to know where the one is, but it wasn't, the pressure wasn't the same as the Genesis gig where it was like, the fill, or that's about to happen.
But I would argue a whole different type of pressure, like you said, being one of the first session gigs. And I think from memory they did quite a few dates as well, that tour that you jumped on initially. Like, it was quite an extensive tour.
Yeah, it was like 36 or 40 shows. And it was funny because we did that one and it was long. It was a lot of UK, a lot of then we did like 6 shows in Germany. And then 2 years later he asked me back, which was, again, I was like, wow, I thought I was just subbing in, but let's do it. And it was funny because on that first tour, Mike was like, I don't think I'm going to do a long tour anymore. I think I'm slowing down. And then the next tour was longer than the one we had just done. It's like 2.5 months of straight. And those tours were no joke because it was like 3 nights in a row, day off, 3 nights.
And what sort of capacity are we talking? Like what are the numbers generally? Yeah, true.
Yeah. And we did so many shows in the UK, and I was blown away by how like every single show packed. And I was like, wow. I mean, it's like, in the UK, the distances are short. And when you've played 34 shows in the UK, you're going, how many more places can you play here? It's not like in the US where, if I go here,
it's quite sparse land in the USA.
Yeah. So, but they, unbelievable. I mean, cause when they regrouped in when I said in 2011, 2012, they did a tour, and I think they were kind of expecting to go right into arenas because of the old Mike and the Mechanics reputation. And it didn't really pan out that way at the beginning. And they have just been so consistent and have rebuilt the reputation of the band where they have a really they have a really loyal fan base. The show's a great show. It's fun. I have a great time with the guys hanging out on the road, because Anto, the guitar player, is ridiculous. He's the kind of guy who won't play the same thing twice. And you're fun. Just like, I would love to have the freedom and the confidence to just, let's do something completely different tonight. And then Luke, the keyboard player, he's like one of those like multi-instrumentalists, knows a bit of everything. And he's the guy that knows the songs better than anybody else. So it's a great hang, and it's really fun kind of to do that. So, as far as goals, I do enjoy going into those contexts, and it almost kind of, you wear a different hat, you lean, because like with Better Strangers, I'm very much myself. I'm Nic. If somebody asked me what kind of drumming, if you had to describe yourself as a drummer of as in the way you want, I would say what I do with Better Strangers, because I have the most freedom. But I do also like wearing a hat and going, okay, I'm leaning a bit more into, okay, I'm doing a bit more of a Jeff thing because this song requires that. And it kind of makes you think a bit differently. It keeps it interesting.
And that's also more tools in the arsenal. And I completely relate to what you're saying there. Like, I went on tour with Natasha Bedingfield last year, and I was able to play through the UK and Europe and stuff. And that's total pop, right? Like, that's just like straight quintessential pop. And I absolutely love playing pop with color splashes, like melodic toms and the transitions and stuff and ins and outs of songs. But bro, on my own, it's like, I don't even know what you call my playing, but like the contrast of you as yourself, and both of them you can get so much of a joy out of, A, because you've got different skill sets, but B, just because of the contrast is so illuminating as a player as well. That's what I find anyway. The way that I play naturally is so different to the stuff that I get joy out of doing session work for. But I love both,
Exactly. And that's the thing of like just being able to because when you kind of can hop into something that's not your thing, the pressure is a bit off. I mean, it's not off completely, but it's different. And you're more like, I'm here to serve the song and here to, it's not about me. And I whereas like, especially doing the instrumental thing with the band, you kind of know, okay, I need to try and prove myself. And is this part where it needs to be? Like, you're scrutinizing it way more.
Yeah.
So yeah, I mean, as far as, at the end of the day, man, like my goal or hope is to just inspire some drummers the same way that like I was inspired by Abe, by Chad, by Taylor in a different way, because obviously those guys are in huge bands. If that happens, amazing. Like I would love that, but it's just to kind of hopefully leave a little bit of an impact behind and just, also have fun doing it. Like my dream would be to be in a band, go on tour and do the thing, like do the band thing. And if that happens, great. But if not, like, having fun doing the session thing, having fun doing clinics, having fun going on tour. So it does kind of depend. I like to kind of try all these, and doing the session stuff and the clinic stuff has been something I've only really done over the last few years. So it's just trying it to see how I like it. And, I've big imposter syndrome when I start doing clinics, because I'm going like, I'm not a clinician.
Bro, every drummer does. Every drummer does, I think what's really endearing about what you're saying is that you that your desires are still the same as any drummer, man. You want to be doing a thing and doing it a lot and getting better at your craft and experiencing experiences through that journey as well. But then I think, like, just to let you know, man, I mean, if we can even talk about your Drumeo stuff too, like you've made such a big impact, dude.
Oh, I appreciate it.
Whether it's like carrying the mantle of your dad's history or yourself as a player living up to that legacy and doing it the justice that it deserves through the work that you've done. Because one thing AI can't do is make you a great player, like it takes a lot of work. And then, like if you look at all the work that you've done with Drumeo, an education platform that is about inspiring and encouraging, man, you've played a massive part in that for them and for yourself, as an independent, as a great drummer, but also as someone who's, bringing a newer audience maybe to your old man's history as well.
Oh, thanks so much, man. I really appreciate that. I mean, yeah, I do. I mentioned it before. Like, you have imposter syndrome when somebody comes up and goes, "Dude, I loved your Drumeo course." I'm like, I don't know what I'm talking about, man. Like, go into, you know what I mean? Like, there's like a little bit of that, but
fake it till you make it, bro.
Exactly. But it's really nice to, I think for me, my goal when it comes to doing clinics or any teaching stuff is just to offer my own perspective, because it was different than, like, I didn't go to music school. I learned hands-on. I learned on the job. I had to drop out of, well, I say I had to, I wanted to drop out of college. I didn't want to be there, but my excuse was that I wasn't going to get the credit for the class because I wasn't going to be there enough, because I was touring with my dad at that point. And I went, finally, this is giving me a reason to drop out, What
an awesome reason, man.
Yeah, it was great. I mean, I remember talking to the director of the drum department. He was like, dude, go and do that. This ain't going anywhere. Like, you can always come back if you want to. And obviously there's some times where I, think, oh, what would life be like had I gone to music school? And who knows, I could still do it. But on one way, not having that knowledge has made me adapt and do things differently.
Yeah.
But sometimes when you're doing a clinic, you're like, am I out of my depth because I can't give you necessarily the total methods and mechanics as to why I'm doing this. It's just, I'm doing it.
I know, but like, think about all the great players that as well, that we all know. It's not necessarily about them understanding it, like the technical aspect of what they're doing. It's their interpretation of it through their voice and experience. And all my favorite players, they have character and personality in spite of the education.
Mm-hmm.
And I pursue it to the way that I can understand it so that I can get better at it. But there is a point where I consciously make a decision not to go much further at the expense of the character and the creativity that comes with being this person that just gets in there and gets your hands dirty, and figures it out. And I think you're definitely a cut of that cloth too.
Yeah, and thanks for saying that. I mean, for me, even now, it's like, because I think there's, like we briefly mentioned, of like wanting to just get better at what you do and better at your craft. And that was like, I have a whole, I was talking about it this weekend with some of the guys, of like the whole thing about AI and the whole thing about totally quantizing your drums. I'm like, when you're doing that, you're totally just, to me, you're missing the point of what it means to play music. It's not about how perfect you can get. It's about actually putting the work in to hopefully get to a place where you feel good about it. Like, I've never edited my band's drum parts. Like, I'm trying to play a whole take.
And even Danny says, look, we'll take the first half from there and the first half or second half from there, because those were vibing, but not editing parts to a point of something that you couldn't do, you know?
Exactly.
And that's the standard of our heroes, man.
Yeah.
Come on, John, Jeff, all these guys, one takers, man.
Exactly. And that was the thing for me, is like at a certain point, yeah, I can fix this. Like, well, for example, dude, this new EP that we've been working on, we've consciously decided to track it without a click.
Cool.
Because of Tool. And because of like, you know, and for years we would try, you know, you'd be, doing the click map and then intentionally slowing things down. And it just never.
Ah, yes.
And the funny thing is, it's our guitar player, Joey. He's the one who's like, dude, no click. Like, trust me, like, we got to try this. And dude, that has been such a hard process in the studio for me, because it's no longer about whether something's right or wrong. It's about, does it feel good? And that's so subjective and so hard to really say. And but at a certain point, we were doing some songs and I was going, yeah, did that part slow down maybe a little bit? Yeah, but I'm like, but if there's no click, this is as good as it's going to get for me right now. You know what I mean? And being okay with it.
And that's really cool as well. Yeah, because like if you look at Rage albums, Rage Against the Machine, like Brad Wilk will just like pull back 3 or 4 BPM in a transition, and you're like, and it makes you go, oh man, that feels so nice. Or even Danny in The Grudge, where it's like, wear the grudge like a crown, when he just goes to the straight 4 and it pulls back. And I suppose a lot of people did assume that they were click mapping up until that conversation with Rick Beato.
Yeah.
But to me, it always felt like I used to be in a Tool tribute, coincidentally, not to like drop or anything. But in learning all of his material, not all of it, not a lot of the modern stuff. I was an old school Tool tribute band, basically up until Lateralis. We did a bunch of material up until that album, and then 10,000 Days wasn't out at that point anyway. Mm-hmm. But my point is that in that experience, learning where he was breathing and actually coming to the conclusion that he wasn't playing to a click, because those imperfections are part of the beauty of it. Yeah. And you couldn't really, especially back then, you weren't click mapping or whatever, you know. But and even Zeppelin, man, the breathing of the music and a lot of that stuff, I think it's lost, man.
Absolutely.
You know, I hate to sound like an old man, but yeah, lean into that, bro. Lean into the fact that you're not perfect and you're not a robot, and neither should you be. And the music should just breathe with the moment, you know.
Yeah, well, dude, thank you for saying that, because that's like, because I've been living in like a, you know, oh my God, like, is this the right decision? Or, you know, and that was, you mentioned the Rick Beato.
No, I think it is.
Yeah, you mentioned the Rick Beato interview. That was Joey, our guitar player, sent me the clip. And he was like, just as a reminder, you know, it's like,
Tool that freaked a lot of people out, man. You go to that part, because I think Rick snipped that out as a short, and you go to the comments, and people are like, what? No click, crazy. Now, because you've done a lot of high-end touring, or even just touring in general, you can play to a click. So you have good internal time. And so you have to kind of rely on the fact that you can do that, but there's like and it's in your core, but you can move outside of that as well. And it's okay. It's totally okay.
Yeah. And it just depends on the context in the band, because I will say, I mean, when I'm practicing, and obviously anybody who's doing rudiments should be doing it to a click, really. And if you're just practicing, but if I'm being hired to do, like for Mike and the Mechanics, I love the fact that there's a click, because I ain't going to be told, dude, that was too fast or too slow. Like,
same with Natasha, bro. I wanted the click, because, you know, you can't, like, the adrenaline, the dopamine running through the system, you're going to be 10 BPM faster whether you realize it or not. So you need the click.
Yeah, that's the thing with Better Strangers. It's like, so do you think we're going to play this song too fast or too slow tonight? It's like, or how much faster do you think we're going to play it?
Oh, that's hilarious.
But with my dad and with Genesis, there was no click other than songs with a drum machine. So that was live. Mike and the Mechanics was the first time I was on tour playing to a click.
So you would be counting in Phil songs or Genesis songs at the tempo that you think, or would you have a click to count you in to then kick in? Or like, what was the setup there? Because that's a lot of pressure, dude. Come on.
Yeah, I mean, some of my dad's songs, we had a metronome that I like, you know, isn't like an actual metronome, wasn't like somebody on a computer. Yeah. Not necessarily with a pendulum, but like one of those like old like Boss ones.
Yeah.
And I would play like, you know, the first 4 bars, 8 bars, 16 bars, depending on what it was at a tempo.
Yeah, just to kick you off. That's a good idea.
Yeah. But with Genesis, a lot of the songs did have drum machine parts. So that helped, because obviously you're essentially playing to a click at that point. And I liked having a rhythmic thing going on. But no, on the Genesis tour, we stopped doing the metronome, because it was just like, all right, let's go and let's do it. And don't get me wrong, sometimes I watch a video and I'm like, ooh, I wish you were a bit slower or a bit faster, but it is what it is. You know, I can scrutinize all I want now that it's done.
I just think that's so cool that you wore the pressure of that and did it, man. Once again, more tools on the tool belt. That's so. I think you've done so much that most people would never experience, let alone in such an early age, at such an early age for you. That's amazing, man.
Oh, thanks, dude. I really, yeah, it's funny how now I think social media and like, obviously I think there's getting older and wanting to get better. So you get more critical and you get more honed in. And then again, like doing instrumental progressive music, you kind of compare yourselves to your peers and what are they doing? And there's a real chase for perfection. And especially because on Instagram and YouTube, because of how accessible it is, which is great, it's also, you know, it's so in your face on how perfect something is.
Well, just how good young players are these days, you know?
I mean, yeah, that too. So when you're comparing and you're going, is this, you know, totally locked in? It's just funny because sometimes if I know I didn't play to a click, I'll overanalyze something way more than it needs to be or than it needs. But then there's certain songs, like I don't know if it did have a click and they just kind of mapped out the different BPMs, but I saw somebody do something with Rosanna the other day.
Yeah.
And it's totally going up and down. And I went, oh, I didn't know that was not to a click.
But it's only slight variations though, eh? Like I watched that video as well. It's like fluctuating between 4 or 5 BPM throughout the whole track at any given point, 1 or 2 down, 1 or 2 up. And it's like, maybe that is why it feels so good. Like it's a subconscious thing. And then when you see it against the meter, you're like, oh, that makes perfect sense. Because it's like, it is breathing with the moment. And because, you know, songs and transitions and pre-choruses, they go through different emotional intensities. The playing kind of matches it. And you're right. Like, it's like, oh man, they didn't record to a click. One of the greatest session bands and bands of all time, you know?
Yeah.
That's fascinating. And it's inspiring. And I always hold myself to the standard of that era because like they may not have done just one take, but they were a one take machine. So they would do a take and use the whole take with all of its blemishes or whatever may come with it. And I think that's awesome, you know?
Yeah, absolutely agree, man. And even just from seeing bands, when I go and see a band live and they're with a click, it's impressive. But when I can see a band, like when we, you know, to mention Tool for like the 100th time so far, but like you watch them and I always go with the guys and when they come to Florida, or we even went to Philly to watch them as a band, we just go. Cool. And you know, the ability that Danny has, it's almost like he's like cracking a whip where it's you're about to lose it and then he just locks you back in with a snare hit or something. And to see that whole venue and then the guys in the band and us just be like, dude, like I felt something there. It's better to do that than just to be perfectly on the grid. And that's what I'm trying to tell, you know, when I did a couple clinics, I'm like, guys, you know, one guy was like, dude, I'm trying to be in a band and I'm having a tough time with our guitar player because he keeps quantizing all my parts. And I'm like, I kind of liked how they were before. And I'm like, I don't know what to tell you, man, because at a certain point, you know, the more you just quantize everything, then it's like, what's the point in even trying to do a full take in the first place?
Or why do you even need a human at that point?
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Like just go get a sample library and just program it.
Yeah.
Or you could just do what your dad did and just use a percussion loop.
Yeah.
As an indirect way of using a click.
Yeah, exactly. And for him, those drum machines, that was just a way for him to be able to write without having to play drums. So that's why all those songs have drum machines. It was just a placeholder.
And Tears for Fears were kind of similar in a way as well, the way that they used it, the Lindrum. But can I once again, like, because I don't want to use up too much of your time, but I do want to I want to ask. Oh no, I want to at least acknowledge Chester because and the reason why is because I don't think he doesn't get talked about a lot, especially in the modern age, but also man, what an honor for you to carry on such an amazing legacy of such a fantastic drummer. And I just wanted to have a little bit of a bro down with you about how cool Chester is. And, you know, like he sings your praises as a player as well, which is such a massive, you know, nod and salute to you as a young drummer and just what you think about. I mean, it's one thing following your dad's thing but Chester, let's talk about him a little bit.
Absolutely. I mean, the first thing is, I think from essentially replacing him, like being the person who came in after him, it just always felt like there was a vibe that people assumed, like it was like a negative vibe that I was getting of like, oh, he's coming
Oh,
in. And
really?
well, not like, it was like, it almost, maybe I just completely made it up in my head, but either people being like, oh, like, I can't believe this happened with Chester. And, there's like a story of apparently him and my dad having a falling out. But he's one of my heroes. When I say my memories about the final farewell tour, like, my dad was the first drummer I looked up to, but Chester was right there with him. When I would learn the drum solo, I was learning Chester's part too. And a
Yeah.
lot of the songs and versions of the Genesis songs, of my dad's songs, it's Chester playing. I obsessed over those live versions almost more than the record versions at a young age. So
That's why I wanted to talk about this. So I'm glad that
yeah,
we're having this discussion.
yeah. So huge part of my drumming DNA, and what he did for that band, for Genesis specifically, to let them carry on and be such a solid rock on the live front. And then also just the cool drum duet stuff that he used to do with my dad. Like, I would just, that was a joy of mine to either watch that live or go back and watch the old ones. And when I did my dad's tour, he was like, okay, you and the percussionist, it was Luis Conte at the beginning, and then it was Richie Garcia. It's like, you guys do a drum duet. And I was like, oh my God, we get to make one too.
Wow.
And obviously part of me wishes I could have done one with my dad, but unfortunately he wasn't playing anymore. But Chester, man, he's very underrated. You're right. Like, not enough people talk about him, whether it's even his work with Weather Report and Zappa as well.
Yeah, I know. Legacy.
And just, yeah, absolutely. And just a phenomenal player. Nothing but great memories as I was, when I was growing up watching him.
Did you feel the bigness of taking on the mantle after him? Were you like, whoa? Or did that even not really come into it? But just like, even maybe looking back at it now as someone a bit older, you're like, oh, wow, that was so cool. Or
Yeah, for sure. I think more so on like my dad's band front, but at the same time, so with Genesis, I think I was more in the mind, in the headspace of like, oh, it's the son of doing those classic parts. So I always looked at it as filling my dad's shoes on that gig.
sure, makes sense.
And then I guess with, his solo band, because it'd been so long since they'd done some shows, a lot of the band was the same, but you also had a couple new faces, so it didn't feel as much like I was the one new guy.
Yeah,
so I guess I didn't really process it in a way of like, oh my God, I'm replacing Chester. But for me, it was just a huge honor to do it, and to, I've learned his parts to a lot of the songs. A lot of the versions are more, the live version, for example, of a song like Domino on the Genesis tour was more Chester than it was my dad. Like, I was playing it like Chester. And so, when I was kind of saying at the beginning, it was just like, I think because I was the son of, and I was going and doing it, I was kind of getting the vibe of like, oh, the something's, like I was kind of replacing Chester, not in a positive way. And I was like, dude, I want people to know how big of a deal he was to me growing up. And, absolute amazing player, and yeah, underrated. I wish more people kind of really were hip to what he was doing.
Well, hopefully, even this conversation will just kind of give him that light and those dues. I'm curious though, like, given that, because I wasn't really looking at it from that space of people being like, "Oh man, he's replaced Chester," but with those feelings, at the very least, from your perspective, whether they were real or not, or validated or not, how did you manage that being young? And was it just a thought and you kind of moved on, or was it a little bit of you kind of having to process and navigate?
It's a mix of both. I mean, fortunately, from what I've seen, I don't go on YouTube and like look at the comments all the time, but from what I have seen, everything seems
all the time.
Yeah, everything seems fairly positive from what I did. I mean, I have a little bit of my dad in there where it's like, let's open the comment section, and then if one bad comment is there, that's going to ruin your week. You know what I mean?
Yes.
Everything else can be positive. I mean, my dad used to read the show reviews of the newspaper, and he used to phone up the reviewer and be like, he would get really offended by it. And
that's amazing.
Yeah.
We need a bit more of that back into this world, eh? Like a bit of accountability for what people are willing to say online.
Yeah, exactly. And so he would really, and the thing is with him, it was stupid because it was like, 18,000 people in an arena loved every second, and you're going to worry about what the random reviewer who probably didn't watch the show.
Yeah, they watched the first two songs and wanted to get out of there before it got busy,
Yeah, exactly. So thankfully my dad, because for years, man, he was getting slated in the press. And that last tour, there's like a documentary called The Long Goodbye, and he reads like the last review of one of the shows, and it's just like awful stuff being said, And when we did the tour back, there was a bit of pressure on the fact that he was coming back. But before we did that first show in Liverpool, we hadn't ran the full set, as in back to front and encore. We hadn't done it. We'd done maybe like the most we'd done was just the set, but we didn't do an encore. So we were kind of unsure on how to do. And man, he was so celebrated on that tour, and everything was nice. We had one bad review in like was it Perth or Sydney? It was one of those. It was in Australia that we got one bad review. And funnily enough, the reviewer's name had the same name as my brother. And I was about to call my brother up, being like, dude, what, you getting a side gig? You like reviewing the shows or something? But for the most part, but now even, I think I'm so proud of my dad that now, I mean, I'm not proud of him because of this, but I'm so glad and happy for him that now he's kind of being seen and celebrated in the way that I think he deserves to be, because for a while it was just brutal. And I think for him, he doesn't quite realize that because he's not on Instagram, he's not on social media, so he's not aware that people like him now, because for a while it was cool to hate on him,
Did he ever talk to you about dealing with that sort of pressure, being someone who's in the limelight, or did he ever talk to you about how he dealt with it just personally? Did that ever come up or not? Because you're right, like, I mean, he went through it on a different level,
Yeah, I mean, he didn't really talk to me about it because I think he didn't really deal with it well, to be honest. Like he took these things to heart, and he would get really upset or offended about these things. And instead of being like I said, dude, the arena that was there, the real people that were in that audience loved every second of it, And and so to kind of relate it in a way to me was that when we were doing his tour, I remember like one guy was like, oh man, I hate the way you're playing Take Me Home. If it was up to me, you'd be doing this. And I'm like, by that point, I'm like, we've been touring for a year and a half. This has gone through so many rehearsals. I'm like, the 14 other people on stage are okay with it this way. So in a way, there's like a bit of like, you tell yourself, and the same thing with the Genesis thing of like, if I'm getting the nod of approval from Mike and Tony that they are okay with it, and my dad as well, then that's what matters. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
I think,
and you can put yourself in that space.
Yeah, exactly. And like, so no, you kind of have like that thing to kind of, that shield of like, okay, it's been, it's gone through that little, it's got a bit of a seal of approval from the people that matter.
Yeah.
But I think I still take it hard when it's like my own thing, because I'm very much trying to feel like I'm, proving myself or trying to prove myself. So when you get, somebody says whatever, and not that I often get any negative comments, but it's just every now and then it can be harder to take in when you don't have that, I guess, that shield of other people kind of, there is the funny thing of like somebody feeling the need to tell, like, if I don't like something, I'm just gonna scroll past it. Never have I ever thought I'm gonna leave a negative comment on this
or a negative review on something. You know what I mean? It's like,
yeah,
it wasn't for me. It's okay. Maybe it is for the 20,000 other people that are loving it.
Exactly. You know what I mean? And it was funny, but I think there is definitely an added pressure now, because you're going to be so scrutinized, whether people end up leaving a bad, comment or not. But I remember, like, for example, those Drumeo first time listening videos. For me, when Todd from Styx did he did literally one take of the Foo Fighter song. I went, well, that's the point of the video, right? You want my first time listening to it? And like, he messed up a little bit, and I was like, dude, that is the way to do it. And so when I did Whiplash, the first one I did with them, that was like my third take, I think. And I was like, well, I messed up the ending, but this is fine. Like, gets the point across.
Yeah.
And then I remember they gave me the Avenged Sevenfold one, and I just started doing Double Kick. And that one's not the best, but now it's on YouTube in perpetuity for everybody to see it. And, so it's like, nowadays.
Were you okay? Did you manage that all right?
I mean, look, when I look back on it, I definitely kind of wish I was a couple years more into my double kicking at that point to go and play stuff by the Rev, I also, the track I was listening to was super compressed, so I couldn't distinguish when he was using toms versus the snare. So I end up kind of playing the same fill over and over again, because that's what I thought I was hearing.
Is that because when they do the stem stripping, it does that crushing thing? Is that why?
Yeah, and this was like 4 years ago, or
okay.
So like it now when I went back last year to do the odd time course, the tech was totally, they upped it. Yeah. But there is a little bit of like on for me, I enjoy the challenge of being like, oh, we're here and let's like, all right, the cameras are rolling. Like you kind of don't have a choice. What am I gonna be? Tell Brandon like, no, I don't want to do this. Like, no, I'm gonna do it.
It's a different sort of pressure, eh, Drumeo?
That's the thing, because you know it's going on YouTube, and you know, because I mean, I've heard, and I'm not going to name names, but I've heard people whose whole brand is social media, and they're not really enjoyable to be around when they're doing that, because they know if they put something out that's not perfect, because that's their image.
I know, then it gets rid of the illusion of perfection, you know?
Yeah.
Yeah, I've heard of those people as well. Preparing for Drumeo was by far the most intense training session that I put myself through, and experiencing Drumeo in the moment was by far the most not stress, I don't want to use that word because I managed myself to a point where I could handle it, but the amount of pressure that I felt in the moment compounded more than anything I've experienced in terms of drumming with a microscope on it.
Mm-hmm.
It was a very, very out-of-body experience.
Yeah, no, absolutely. It was. I mean, I really enjoyed doing those first-time listening ones, because I used to grow up. When I was growing up, I used to watch Drumeo, so like I liked what they did. When we did the documentary about my dad originally, I mean that ended up going through a couple different copyright battles because
fascinating.
My dad's catalog was sold in between us shooting it, or had just been sold. I don't remember how it went, but there was a whole thing about using the music. But we were gonna do a whole course about the Genesis stuff, so I had to learn like 40 songs, and that, in a way, sometimes I'm glad that doesn't come out, because like I would totally scrutinize it more now when you're like, because that's the thing where I'm like, dude, I didn't write these parts.
You filmed, did you film it or not?
Yeah, we filmed it. I played the songs. And so you're talking like Dancing with the Moonlit Night, like these songs that are so, because I know what I am as a drummer, and I can try and like, try and impersonate the fusion version of my dad, but that's just not natural to me. It's like, for example, if I go, to New Orleans and try to sit down on like a real jazz gig, it's not going to feel as good as a guy who's been doing it all the time. Gotcha. Like, yeah, you can fake your way around it, but it's not like the real thing. So I always found it hard to like, how am I supposed to sit here and teach or describe a part that was written 30 years before I was born, and that I don't know. Like I can, if I'm talking about a song that I did on tour, that's different because I've lived it a bit.
That's so ambitious that you would do it, that they put that to you and you did that.
Yeah. So again, I don't think I would say yes to it now, but I think at the time I was just excited about it.
My favorite moments, by the way, of that documentary are you sitting with your dad and talking and just watching the way you guys like, and just appreciating moments together, like him looking at the Gretsch. And I don't know, it's the moments that are kind of in between the story that of just you two that I just really like as a dad and, as a son as well, which must have been super special for you. The documentary, obviously, because I spoke to Brandon a little bit about it, not much, but in the DMs when it came out, you can tell obviously that it had to be reconsidered due to those limitations of the music and whatnot. But there's some moments in there that are just so nice between you and him, man. It's really cool.
Yeah, thanks, man. I mean, like that, I got to appreciate that for sure. But one thing that I wish I could have really taken in on those tours that I did with him was to, as I've gotten older, I've like, wow, how awesome is it that I got to have those memories with him, and just to spend time with him on the road. Like, we have a great relationship. We're very close. But I wish as a kid, I could have really taken it all in, but both being with him, both playing these shows, because it goes like that, man. It's so the next thing you're not doing it anymore. So That's something for sure, of like being able to share those moments with him and doing the Drumeo thing. That was kind of for me a way of not putting that chapter to bed, but being like, here's something I can do for my dad to celebrate him. And then now that we've done that, I can try and go and do my own thing, but like kind of feeling like I've kind of done everything I can, really, because I'm not going to go and start a tribute band and do that. You know what I mean? Like it is.
You could do the Dweezil thing, bro. Once you've activated those pipes of yours, shave your head, bro. You could be away laughing.
Yeah, if I'm ever, if I'm struggling for, financially, that's my backup plan, is just to go tribute.
How about this? I'll be your Chester Thompson. All right.
There you go. Okay. I just need the bald cap and then we're set.
Yeah, exactly. And you might have to trim the beard too. I think we should leave it there, man, purely just because I've taken up so much of your time, and it's just really nice to kind of get to that point of the story where there's so much more to be told, but that's going to be the part that you're going on to live and experience. And I just want to say, dude, I have to say, and you know, I know I've given you a lot of grace in this because it's well deserved, but your continuation of his legacy whilst honouring just the journey of drumming itself and the craft and just putting that forward. But yeah, like I say, honouring his legacy in a way where it doesn't feel gratuitous. If anything, it's just holding him up as the artist and the contributor to music and drumming that he's done. You've just done such a fantastic job of that, and hats off to your parents as well for such a fantastic job with you, young man.
Oh, thank you, man. Thanks so much for saying that. It really does mean the world. And thanks again for having me on. Like, you know, like I said at the beginning, I'm a big fan of your playing. So just for you to even want to have me on the podcast was like a surreal moment of like, oh my God, like what? Like, this is crazy. And, you know, so I really appreciate it, man.
Of course. Well, you're a legend, mate. And let's just keep in touch. And I hope the best for you and your band and your little puppy. And we'll talk soon.
Absolutely, Stan. Thanks so much.
Cheers, mate.
Cheers, man. Take care.